Oh, yeah,
things
video,
in,
right
which
here.
is nice.
Yeah, you just click staff PC Zoom.
And then I went to Vero Beach's Christmas concert, and they're like night and
And I
day.
think I put all your stuff up here.
Vero Beach is
There you go.
Going to go ahead and call to order the December 14th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. For today's meeting, we do have the absence of the chair and the vice chair. Therefore, we will be asking who would like to run the meeting this evening, and I believe it goes to the most senior member of the board. But I believe we have asked Mr. Chip or Ms. Beth who would like to chair the meeting.
Well, I think that Chip has more time overall on the P&Z than I do, so I would defer to him.
Then I'll pass this down to Chip, but I will ask him to give me just a quick minute to make a real quick announcement before we do start. So to the applicants for this evening, I will note that because while you do see 5 members up here, one of the members, Ms. Berenborg, is a non-voting liaison. Therefore, we have just the bare minimum for a quorum of the 4 members present in order for the vote. So in order for your item to pass, it must pass by a 4-0 vote. So if you feel unsure or something of that nature, if you feel you would like to remove your item from the agenda for tonight, please let staff know so we can get that moving. Other than that, I will go ahead and pass this on over now to Mr. Lander so he can start the.
I'd like to call this to order, and if we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and I'll appreciate your all's patience as well. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you remove item number 5B from the agenda.
Any other requests? Not? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, number 3, is the approval of the minutes of October 26, 2023.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving along. Item number 4 is the items that are not on consent. A is Sebastian Landing PD, request for a preliminary PD plan plat approval for a 72-unit multifamily apartment complex with associated amenities, e.g. cabana, pool, walking trail, to be known as Sebastian Landing PD. Gaddis Properties LLC owner, WGI Inc. agent, located on the east side of US Highway 1, south of 109th Street. The zonings are RM6, residential multifamily, up to 6 units per acre. And Con 2, Estuarine Wetlands Conservation District, land use designations L2, low density, residential 2, up to 6 units an acre. And C2 Conservation 2, up to 1 unit per 40 acres. The density is 7.43 units per acre. PD 220503, 2004, 1201, 83-91919. This is quasi-judicial. So first, have we had any commissioners with any ex parte communications? No? Okay. And number 2 is presentation by county staff. Now, do we need, this is quasi-judicial, do we need anybody to stand and raise their hand at this point?
At this point, no, because the public hearing hasn't necessarily opened. They are simply just sharing their presentation on what has been submitted. Once the public hearing opens after this, then we can go ahead and have whoever's going to go ahead and testify stand and be sworn in.
Okay. Staff?
Yes, good evening, Commission. For the record, Patrick Murphy, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Services Department. There we go. All right, tonight we have the Sebastian Landing PD, preliminary PD plan plat. Before we get into the project, just a quick overview of the overall process for plan developments. The first stage, it's a four-step process. The first stage is the PD special exception and conceptual PD plan. That goes to Planning and Zoning Commission, who makes a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and then the BCC votes to either approve the project, deny the project, or approve the conditions. Should that happen, then they come back and they submit their application for the preliminary PD plan plat. Should that be approved, the next step is to then apply for the land development permit, which is their construction drawings. Once the LDP is issued, that gives them the authority to start construction of the project, and they work through all of that until they get their certificate of occupancies. At that stage, then they can apply for the final step, which is their final PD plan plat, which goes straight to the Board of County Commissioners. I'd like to point out that they've already gone through step one, which was the special exception and conceptual PD plan. That was approved on December 7th, 2021. So we are now on the second step of this process, the preliminary PD plan plat. Location map, the site is shown on the map within the red box. It is east of and adjacent to US Highway 1, west of and adjacent to the Indian River Lagoon, and south of and adjacent to 109th Street. The aerial map shows the site superimposed on the vacant parcel, how it integrates with existing development around all of its sides. Directly to the north is the River Run condos on the north side of 109th Street. Adjacent to the site to the north is the Dales Landing subdivision. Abutting to the south is Reflections on the River condo, and again, US 1 abuts the site to the west. Site plan shows the site. The red boxes are the 4 buildings. Each one of these buildings are 3 stories tall. They each contain 18 units for a total of 72 units. And then the parking is all out in front of each building for access. Traffic circulation, when you come into the site, the residents can go straight through the center. It's going to be a gated community. They're all going to have their own codes to get in. On the very south side or to the right is your guest entrance. You can call in and get in. And then, of course, on the north side, that's the exit lane that all folks can go through. To the north of the site, you'll see a little T shape. That's the fire department turnaround in case of emergency access. This is a 2-lane driveway that goes all throughout the site and circles throughout, and it meets all of the parking regulations, all of the width requirements for maneuverability. Stormwater plan, there are 3 interconnected ponds. You'll see them shaded in blue by underground pipes. They flow to a drainage outfall that dumps into the existing wetlands. There's approximately 4.5 acres that make up that basin, that wetland basin. It will help to rehydrate it, and it'll also continue to filtrate it as it comes through. The landscape plan, in green is their 25-foot type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature. It rings the site on the west, the north, the south, the north, and the west side. It doesn't continue all the way because the wetlands is being left completely intact and wooded. They do have a very thick existing tree canopy. You'll see just to the left or to the west of the wetlands, that's all being kept, and there's a little pedestrian path that cuts through there. All of the ponds will have lake shoreline trees and littoral shelves within them as well to help filtrate nutrients. With that, we've gone to the staff recommendation is for PZC to approve the preliminary PD plan plat for Sebastian Landing PD with conditions listed in the staff report related to deed restrictions and/or easements are required that restricts development within the environmentally sensitive areas on-site and off-site. The purpose of this is there are density that has been transferred from the on-site wetland to the upland portion of the site. There's also density that has transferred from an off-site bank of 11 acres that was transferred to this property. They will need to record either an easement or deed restrictions that restricts development on those properties. They won't be able to develop any type of residential on them because all of that density has been transferred to the upland portion of this property. The conservation easements for on-site wetlands and uplands must be left intact. Final landscape, sidewalk, pedestrian system, and street lighting design must be approved as part of the LDP. Final tree protection and mitigation plans also must be approved by the LDP. And then the installation and construction of required improvements is also a condition. With that, be happy to answer any questions the commission may have, and the applicant's representatives are in attendance.
Any questions?
If I may, sorry. Mr. Landers, thank you. Not a question, but just a quick comment. Susan Prado, Deputy County Attorney, for the record. I did, in reviewing this, note something that was not able to be changed due to the time constraints. However, on the actual report itself on page 3, it addresses some of the environmental issues, mainly the conservation easements, which is the native uplands, and the conservation easement for the wetlands. I will note that while this report says that the easements can be granted prior to or via the project's final plat, that our code actually does require that the establishment of the conservation easement shall be required to overlay all that stuff, but it's supposed to happen prior to the plat, not on the plat. So there will be a separate conservation easement document that will be required to have had before you can get the land development plan or land development order. There is a conservation easement template that is accepted by the county attorney's office. And I just wanted to put that out there before we got further down the road of plating and someone had a question about that particular issue, but that's all.
No other questions? Any questions of the applicant? None? We'll open the public hearing and ask the secretary to swear in all witnesses collectively, please.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Name and address. I know who you are.
Thank you. Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joseph Paladin. I'm the president of Black Swans Consulting. I'm also the owner's rep on this project, and I've known this company for over 20-some years and have worked with them and consider them to be more than reputable. If you have any questions, I'll be here for the rest of the hearing to answer them, but I have my planner here, and I'd like for him to come up and do the presentation for me. Matt Barnes.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, good evening. Matthew Barnes, Senior Project Manager with WGI, here on behalf of the applicant Gaddis Properties. My offices are 2035 Vista Parkway in West Palm Beach. I do have a presentation. I don't think I need to run through it. I think staff did a great job on their presentation, summing everything up. I'll just reiterate a couple things, that this same project was here 2 years ago and received unanimous recommendation for approval by the BCC, and then received unanimous approval from the BCC for the conceptual PD. It's the same project, just a few things were tweaked through the PD process, but it's the same number of units, it's the same location of the buildings, everything, the parking and all that. So, staff has reviewed and confirmed that it meets the LDRs and the comp plan. I don't really have anything to add other than that, just here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Any other members of the public that would like to speak? Please come up.
My name is Joseph Braun. I represent River Runner Sebastian Condominium. I've spoken before about the preliminary issues, and I do have a couple of questions because I have not been made aware of the follow-up decisions that were made. I am aware that at the prior meeting, if I look at the planning documents, there were some comments that were put in place, 3 or 4 of which affect us directly. One is, I'd like to understand that the lights, the intended lights, are going to be shielded such that they don't impact the residents of River Run. That was a comment that was on, but it's not included in item 13C today. Secondly, the wall on the north side of the property had featured a berm, a fencing, and foliage. And I assume that that is the same. I haven't seen the detail of that, but I'd like to make sure that that is in fact what we have to look at as a community, okay? And would be, if you will, a way to keep everything going nice and smooth. The wall is the way to go. I understand there's a fence that's going in, but we'd also like to know that we're going to be looking at the same berm and the same trees that we saw at the last presentation. The third thing is that I was not aware of, in the planning environmental item 37, it talks about manatee mortality and the marina itself, okay? I had not been aware that the marina plan existed, and I have no problem as long as that's the only use of the east side properties, okay? There's a discussion about storage, and I was under the impression it's gonna be left as is, that it wasn't gonna be developed for storage and other items. It's supposed to be left in the old configuration. If that's not true, I'd like to just know that that's not true. Okay? And thirdly, we're very concerned about we have an expectation that there could be some problems that we're going to need to contact people about. So we're going to ask what the approach to a 24-hour contact is for things that need to be discussed. It could be noise, it could be a problem. We wouldn't know who to call, okay? We need to know what the concept's going to be for contact. If it's a neighbor, you know what the neighbor's phone number is. If it's and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how do you handle that? Because it's kind of important. They're only 100 feet away from us, okay? And last, I would like to request copies of tonight's information, okay? Whatever presentations that are made. I think I have most of it in the formats that were mailed out. But if there are other presentations describing things, I'd like to make sure I get a copy of that.
Staff, would you like to address?
Sure. Yes, I was just waiting to make sure I had all of the items. So the first item that the gentleman asked about was the lighting. And yes, we do have codes that require lighting to be directed down, shielded. They have shown the light pole locations on here. There is a detail that does show those. They will be coming back for their land development permit, which is going to reiterate that requirement for that. And they're going to have a very strict detail on there with shields on those. That we will make sure that that is addressed. For the berm, they do have a berm and a 6-foot fence along their north property line. We do not have a requirement in our code to make that a wall. Berms with a fence on them have been used throughout Indian River County, have been very successful. That's something that the board could consider, but staff believes that the berm that they have on their north property line is sufficient for buffering. A marina, the dock that they're planning to do or have in concept has not been approved. It's not gone through any permitting. It still has to go through DEP permitting in St. John's. It's not, my understanding, set up to be a marina. There's a few boat slips for the residents of the facility itself, Sebastian Landing. It's not to be a commercial marina. The applicant, if they would like to, could address that as well. And then as far as who to contact, I know that there's going to be a leasing office on site, an office within the facility that's going to be manned during regular office hours. If there's any issues, I'm sure they could stop by and talk to the leasing manager that's on call, or on site, excuse me. Of course, we can give him all the documents from tonight, maps, the staff report. I'll give him my contact information, and he can reach out to me tomorrow or whenever's convenient for him, and I will give all the information necessary.
Just a comment, the community's concern was not the work day, if there's a problem. We figured it'd be somebody there during the day. The question is, what do you do on Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning when there's a problem that needs to be discussed? Who do you call? Who do you contact?
My question to that is, are you talking about once the community and development is already done and there's
Yes.
tenants?
Yes.
Well, then at that point in time, it's just like any other, I hate to say neighbor, but it's not a single person residence. You would still, if there's someone in the leasing office, contact the leasing office. If not, then that is a noise complaint through the sheriff's office, and that's their realm or their arena of contact.
Just looking for that contact. If it's the sheriff, it's the sheriff. Okay?
Yep.
You know,
Generally, you'll find for the leasing offices, there's always an emergency number if it is an emergency.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I assume that that's good, and I thank you very much for your effort.
Any other members of the public would like to speak? Any questions from the commissioners? No? I did have a couple of questions myself, if you don't mind then. Regarding the boat slips that are there, are they a day dock or would they be sold on a permanent basis?
Good evening, Commissioners. This is David Offstein on behalf of the owner. We're currently going through we've submitted permits to DEP and St. John's to work through the issues. This is not intended to be, and I can just say it right now, it is not intended to be a commercial marina. It's just an amenity that I would imagine won't be more than day docks, because I don't think some of the other ones in the area, I'm not intimately familiar with them. I just don't see them as other than temporary, you know, if you pull up a boat or something like that. There's only going to be a handful of docks at most.
Any other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions from anybody. So, final presentations by the staff, if there is any?
No, sir.
The applicant? Okay.
If you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
No more questions from staff? Okay, we close the public hearing. And commissioners, what is your questions, comments, motions?
Motion to approve with staff's recommended conditions.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. 4-0 vote.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4B. Mandela Village, or is it Mandalay? Correct me. Mandala. Wrong all the way around. Sorry about that. Mandala Village, PD TND Phase 1, request for preliminary PD plan plat approval for Phase 1 of a development to be known as Mandala Village, PD TND. Phase 1 is to include 168 residential units, 2 mixed-use buildings, office, retail, residential, and an amenity recreation areas, stormwater areas, landscape buffers, and other associated site improvements. Mandala Village LLC owner, Mills Short and Associates Incorporated, is the agent. This is located at the northwest corner of the 58th Avenue and 53rd Street intersection. Zoning is PD TND, Plan Development, Traditional Neighborhood Design. Land use designation L1, Low Density Residential 1, up to 3 units per acre, and Ag 1 Agricultural, up to 1 units per 5 acres. Phase 1 density is 2.13 units per acre, PD 210403, 2005, 120-297-88861, quasi-judicial. So once again, let's see, any ex parte communications? Okay. And presentation by county staff.
For the record, Brandon Cragen, Chief of Current Development. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Before you today is the Mandala Village PDT&D for Phase 1 of 2 of this project. This is a preliminary PD plan and plat. This is going to follow the exact same process as the last item that was just heard. So the initial process is the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan that gets a recommendation from the PZC, and then it then goes on to the Board of County Commission for either their approval, denial, or change in conditions. So we are now at the preliminary PD plan/plat stage where it only goes to this board for either approval, denial, or you have the ability to approve with alternate conditions as well. After that, it goes to the land development permit stage, or waiver if it's granted. In this case, there wouldn't be a waiver that would be granted, but there are some instances where that can happen. And then finally, you have the final PD plan/plat process, which is approved by the Board of County Commission. Now, this is a 2-phase project, so eventually, when Phase 2 is ready, you will see Phase 2 come back for the preliminary PD plan and plat process. So this is just for Phase 1 tonight. So project history, this project was approved on January 21st of 2020. for the rezoning and conceptual PD process by the Board of County Commission. And then also this past Tuesday, the developers agreement was approved by the Board of County Commission as well. The project is located on the west side of 58th Avenue, north of 53rd Street. I'd also like to take special note that a few months ago, this board approved the phases 1 and 2 for the Providence Point development, which is directly south of this. They were very similar projects in that they were both PDT&Ds, and they had mixed-use residential, commercial. This tonight is mostly just the residential portion of the development. So this is an aerial, just to give you an idea of how this will overlay with the existing conditions on site. And the overall conceptual PD plan, as I said, will be a 2-phase project. So everything that you see in blue will be phase 2 and will not be subject of any approval tonight. Everything that you see in gray and white is considered phase 1 of this project. Phase 1 of this project will commence the 168 residential units. There will be 2 mixed-use buildings, which will be office, retail, and residential. All the amenity and recreation, or rather, I should say, most of the amenity and recreation areas will be in phase 1. There will be additional amenity and recreation areas that will also be in phase 2. All the stormwater areas will be a part of this phase, and then the landscape buffers and any associated site improvements will be involved in phase number 1. So as you can see, the preliminary stormwater plan calls for the stormwater ponds to mostly be located on the north and eastern side of the development. These stormwater ponds will carry all of the stormwater runoff for both this site and the 53rd Street improvements. And that's part of one of their public benefits that they're asking for tonight. Traffic circulation plan will call for a right-in, right-out connection to 53rd Street. You can see down at the bottom south eastern portion of the corner, this is where one of the mixed-use buildings is going to be. Eventually, it will have a connection into the development, rather the internal portion of the development with phase 2, but for right now, it'll just be a right-in, right-out only. It'll kind of be separated from the majority of the project. You also have your full access connection to 53rd Street. And then finally, you have a future connection to 49th Street, which will then connect to 53rd in phase 2 of the project. And sorry, that should say 53rd Street, not 49th. And then eventually in phase 2, there will be another connection to 53rd Street for a total of 4 connections to 53rd Street. And then finally, you have the preliminary landscape plan, which calls for our PD plan buffers, which is a 50-foot buffer on portions of the south and north portions of the site, and then there'll be a continuous 50-foot landscape buffer on the western part because this does abut agricultural land, which is a requirement of our PD perimeter, and then also along the entire eastern, most of the northern and most of the southern, you'll have the standard 20-foot thoroughfare landscape buffer that we have for all of our developments within the county that abut major roadways. So the dedication improvements and conditions. So we're going to have some right-of-way dedications. You're going to have the 53rd Street, 120 feet along the southern segment, which is approximately 2,000 feet. As part of the conceptual PD plan process, there was also some other portions of another 120-foot segment that was dedicated to the county. So this is just the remaining portion that needs to be dedicated to the county. For 58th Avenue, the final width for that right-of-way determination will be determined through the final survey and design work that will be coordinated through engineering and public works. You have roadway paving. So part of the developer's agreement allowed for 2 northern lanes on 53rd Street to be extended to the westernmost portion of the Mandala Village PDT&D project. Providence Point will pick up the southern 2 lanes as part of their development agreement for a total of 4 lanes, and it's going to be exactly what you have on the eastern side of the road for the other developments that are on that side of the road. You also have turn lane improvements for 53rd Street. You have a westbound right turn lane at the project's full access connection to 53rd Street. You're going to have an eastbound left turn lane at the project's full access connection to 53rd Street as well. And then finally, you're going to have a westbound right turn lane at the project's right-in, right-out connection to 53rd Street, which is that area that is sort of segmented from the project right now, but will eventually be married into the project via phase 2. The stormwater capacity, as I mentioned earlier, for the adjacent roadway improvements at 53rd Street are also a dedication within the project. And then finally, you have the sidewalks along 53rd Street and 58th Avenue that are both required for developments. With that, staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission approve the preliminary PD plan and plat for the Mandala Village PDT&D Phase 1 with the conditions listed in the staff report. These conditions are generally related to the final right-of-way dedications and off-site roadway design and construction, final design for stormwater runoff from adjacent public roadways, final landscaping, street lighting, and tree protection mitigation plans, which will be approved via the land development permit stage of the project, the final design and placement for a transit stop to be coordinated with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, all the internal and external sidewalk improvements, the installation and construction of any other required improvements, and then finally, any dedications prior to or via the final plat. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Commissioners, question? Just one question that I had regarding that is, you'd have to go back 3 or 4 screens, but I saw that it's a private road with public access. Help me out.
You're talking about the full access connection?
Private roadway open to the public, yeah, it's listed.
Yeah, so basically it's my understanding that there are no gates a part of this project. So if you can see that there's a proposed amphitheater up on the middle portion of the development. So I think this is supposed to be one of the amenities and one of the features of the development. The applicant could at one time decide to come in and they want to gate some sections, but that would have to be done via an administrative approval with the planning department.
And so no gates, and then there is a turn lane on 53rd Street that'll be westbound into the, I'm sorry, on 58th Avenue, a westbound,
Yes.
okay, turn lane. And there's already a light there, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah, it was part of the county, or recent county improvements. They put a light and they extended the intersection. So, yep.
Any other questions? If not, would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Wesley Mills with Mills Short and Associates. Thank you for having us tonight. Appreciate Brandon's presentation. It was detailed. I think he went through most of the items associated with this project, so I'm here just to answer any questions that you may have. One thing I did just want to point out in regards to your recent question, there is a gate, but it's set into the project that will restrict access back to the residential unit. So the main portion of the project where the commercial is will not be gated.
So where would the gate be then, to help me out? I'm a little slow sometimes.
So the first, as you come in, the second road that goes north-south, where the circle is by the retention pond, right there, yep.
Okay. And that would go to the south then, or the south access?
Yes.
Questions? Commissioner?
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, and at this point in time, I'd like to open the public hearing. If the secretary would swear in any witnesses that would like to speak.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Anyone who would like to speak on the matter? No? If not, any additional questions by the commissioners for the county staff or the applicant?
None.
Okay. And if not, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
I'll second.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. 4-0. Okay, moving on to hearing now. Item number 5, that's the School Street Apartments LLC's request to rezone plus or minus 2 acres from RS6 Residential Single Family District to RMH8 Residential Mobile Home District, RZON 960-50010-95727. This is quasi-judicial. So,
Good evening, Board. For the record, I'm Cindy Thurman, Senior Planner with Long Range Planning. For your consideration tonight is rezoning request from School Street Apartments LLC for a 2-acre property located in the Gifford area. Here we go. The subject property is 2 acres located in the Gifford area on the north side of 45th Street, just east of 58th Avenue. This area of the county consists of a mixture of single-family subdivisions, large lot mobile home development, and some industrial uses to the south. The purpose of this request is to secure the zoning necessary to develop the site with uses permitted in the RMH 8 zoning district. The applicant owns approximately 14.5 acres adjacent to the property and would like to add the subject property to the overall site for redevelopment. As you can see here in the brown, the requested RMH zoning district is established in the area and surrounds the subject property on the east, west, and south. And the future land use map shows the area is all consistently designated M2, medium residential 2 with up to 10 units per acre. We'll take a look at the existing zoning district. The RS6 district is a single-family zoning district. Uses are designated for residential use, providing for single-family housing opportunities, ensuring adequate public facilities to meet the needs of residents. When we compare the existing zoning district with the proposed RMH district, we can see the different minimum lot sizes, width, the density, the setback, and minimum open space. And then we go to what's proposed. We have the RMH8 is a mobile home zoning district, but it's also designated for residential, providing mobile home opportunities, but also ensuring adequate public facilities to meet the housing needs of residents. Again, we go back and see that the future land use designation is consistent with the rezoning request. The M2 future land use designation is intended to provide for areas with the development of residential uses with densities up to 10. The RMH8 zoning classification will limit the density to 8 units per acre, not the 10. Did want to point that out. As part of your responsibility as the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have criteria that we have to look at under section or chapter 902.12, subsection 3, items A through K, and these must be reviewed whether or not the proposal amendment meets the criteria in A through K. So we need to look at whether or not it's in conflict with any applicable portion of land development regulation. We've not been able to identify any conflicts consistent with all the elements of the comprehensive plan. So specifically, the ones that apply to this rezoning are the future land use element objective 1 and policies 1.13 and policies 1.43, and we found that it meets the criteria. It does meet the existing and proposed land uses, and as part of this request, no land use amendment is being part of this request. It is in compliance with the adopted county thoroughfare plan. The main access for this site is from 45th Street. All roadway segments within the area of the influence would operate at an AM accessible level of service under the proposed RMH 8 zoning. The subject to the change conditions, the site is abutted on all 3 sides by RMH 8 zoning, and the applicant owns adjacent property and would like to add this single property to the rest of his holdings for redevelopment. And the applicant may be required to pay connection of customary fees, and a more detailed concurrency review will be conducted as they get further along in the redevelopment process. So also as part of the review, we do look at the highest and most intense use of this property for concurrency under section 910.07 of the Land Development Regulations. And based on this, we looked at the 2 acres and the existing RS6 zoning, and we found that the most intense use under the existing zoning would be 12 single-family, and the most intense under the proposed would be 16 single-family mobile home units. So as we go through the criteria further under 902, we found that it meets under that there would be no significant impacts under the natural resources, that it does have a logical development pattern, that it would not be in conflict with the public interest, that is in harmony with the land use development patterns and the land development regulations, and that we do believe that it does meet all of the mandated, it could meet all the mandated facilities, and it has adequate capacities to accommodate the development. So in conclusion, the requested RMH8 zoning district is compatible with surrounding area, consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the county's comprehensive plan, is consistent with the county's land development regulations. The location of subject property is in an area deemed suitable for residential mobile home uses, and the subject property meets all the applicable location criteria to be zoned RMH8, and staff supports the request. And so we recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the request to rezone the subject property from RS6 Single Family Residential District to RMH8 Mobile Home Residential District. If you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Commissioners? Just for my own clarification, can you show the other property around that is owned by the existing property owned by the individual, just so I can put it all together?
One more time, say that.
What is the other property around it that's?
The other properties that are around it are, they're RMH8, and they're single-family mobile home structures.
Property owned by this individual?
Yes.
So the access is not an issue for that property?
No, sir, it's off of 54th Drive. Let me go back to the location map, I'm sorry. If you look right here, the subject property is that 2-acre piece, and 54th Drive actually dead ends into it. And it has access right from 45th Street.
All along 54th? Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that there's sewer available?
Yes, there is capacity available at the property.
Okay. All right.
And they'll have to come in and do a site plan and everything for the redevelopment of the property to include it with their holdings.
And the concurrency is subject to review?
Yes, it's subject to review, and it will be examined again, but it was looked at by our traffic concurrency, and everything will be again reviewed during the land development site plan process.
I know there's some other things going on along the street there, through there as well, so.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any other questions. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Hi, Jeff Marquette with Schulke, Biddle and Stoddard. I'm here with the owners tonight. No, thank you. Thank you, staff. Really don't have anything additional to add, but be happy to try to answer any questions if you have them.
Questions? So,
Thank you.
One question. What
I'm
would
sorry.
be the total number of mobile homes available then? Assuming all this, the existing piece plus this piece?
I don't know. The total applicant-owned property, if this passes to RMH8, is, I think, 15, 16 acres, so whatever that multiplies out, I'm not sure.
Up to 8 units an acre then?
Yes, sir.
120.
Which you never get, but yes, sir.
Yeah, no, yeah, drainage and roads and everything
Right.
else through there. But some affordable housing too, which would be nice. Okay. No other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. And if the secretary will swear in any witnesses that would like to speak, anyone would like to speak?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Any comments or questions from the public? Okay. If not, I will go ahead and see if there's any other questions for staff. Okay. All right, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, ma'am, did you have your hand raised?
Will, I know that you had requested to have 5B removed.
Can we address that after this?
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's okay. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so no other items on the agenda except for a question for 5B, if you'd like to go ahead and ask.
Okay, may I come up and?
If I didn't
We
hear.
didn't get, we didn't
I'm
get
sorry.
approval on that, Chip.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may, I just want to go ahead and avoid any sort of public hearing on 5B. I can tell you the item was removed due to a conflict of interest. We would not have a voting quorum present. One of the members on the board does have a conflict and cannot vote on that, so therefore it has been removed for that purpose, and it will be rescheduled for a later date. So just out there for anybody that wants or was here for that particular item. That's the reason why it was removed.
Would I be able to comment on anything with 5B?
Not today, ma'am. You would have to come when the when the public hearing is actually held. So it was removed today because we just can't have it.
Because there could be a conflict with jury duty possibly, depending on when your next meeting is, when this would be coming up.
Okay, I know it would be sometime in January. I don't have the exact date offhand, so,
Okay.
sorry.
We'll give you an excuse to get out of jury duty potentially. I have grand jury duty in January too, so I feel. Okay, I'm sorry, vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Motion and second. All right. Vote was 4-0, so thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners' matters?
Yes, just one. I would just like to wish everybody a happy holiday.
Just to confirm, we won't be meeting again until next year, 2024?
March.
Yeah, no. So, and I would like to go ahead and say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, and all the other sorted items. So if no other items, I will close the meeting.
Good job.
So.
No, he